But I thought to myself, what makes us scared, right? It's not just tension. It's seeing something that's unnatural. They sexually tortured this man, and a mob of Jewish fanatics came and tried to defend the sodomizers. The world is becoming unnatural. The world is so dark that even God himself came to earth and they killed them. All right, everyone. So I want to talk to you guys about horror movies. What makes us scared? What makes us horrified? And what got me to do this video is a horror movie that I saw last night. Well, technically, I actually saw it today, but I'll fess up. I was watching a horror movie at 4 in the morning, all right? Not the best time to be watching a horror movie. But really, if you watch a horror movie at 4 in the morning, I mean, you get a different experience. It hits differently. But I saw this horror movie called The First Omen. The First Omen is a prequel to the original Omen film. Now, I never saw the original Omen, but I did see the remake that came out back in 2005, 2006. I saw it in theater when it first came out. It was actually pretty good. And it's basically just a modern-day remake of the original, but I saw The First Omen, which is the prequel. Now, the movie The Omen is about this kid who is born to be the Antichrist. I know it sounds very comical, but the film was well done. The remake, I never saw the original. And the kid is, he's the spawn of Satan. He's the spawn of Lucifer. And the Catholic Church is involved in this conspiracy to usher in the Antichrist. And so what happens is that you have this American ambassador. He is the American ambassador to Rome or the Vatican, whichever. And his wife is pregnant, and then she gives birth, but the baby dies. And so the ambassador, he is so heartbroken by this, and he doesn't really want to tell his wife that the baby died. He doesn't want to break her heart. So the hospital says, listen, there is a little infant here, and well, the parents are gone. The parents are not here. Do you want to just take this infant and then tell your wife that this is her biological baby? So he agrees. He takes the baby. And he doesn't know that this baby is the spawn of Lucifer, and this baby is born to be the Antichrist. And I guess they want the American ambassador to raise up the child so that the child will eventually get into politics. The child will be raised in a life of politics, so hopefully the kid will become, I guess, the next American president or something like that, and then the Antichrist will rule the world through America. And so the Catholic Church is involved in this, and in the first Omen movie, it's the Vatican that comes in and kills this American guy's and his wife's baby, and it's the Vatican that puts this baby in the hospital. So now you have this new movie that came out, The First Omen. The First Omen is how the whole thing happened, and who was the mother of this spawn of Lucifer? Who was the mother of the Antichrist? And so in the film, it shows that the mother is a nun, and she's a nun, and she was, unbeknownst to her, she was actually groomed to be the mother of the Antichrist. Now, the film, like I said, it's kind of comical. It's kind of silly. I mean, come on, the spawn of the devil. But it has its really creepy moments. And I saw it at 4 in the morning. Not the best time to watch a horror movie, but I watched it at 4 in the morning. And I will say, this movie, even though it's not perfect, it's not this masterpiece of a film, the damn movie has its creepy moments. And there is a scene in the movie that kind of got to me, and it's the scene where this nun, she's an American woman, she's very naive, she's idealistic, she wants to do right, she wants to serve the church, and then she gets into the monastery, and she doesn't realize that the monastery is evil, and the nuns in there are evil, and all the nuns in this monastery are in the occult, and they worship Lucifer, and they want the Antichrist to be ushered in. And she doesn't realize this until later on in the film. And she thinks it's all good, and she thinks it's the sisters are pious, but she starts seeing some creepy things. So she's in the monastery one day, and all of a sudden she sees this nun looking at her from the edge of this wall, and you can't see the nun's body. The nun's body is behind the wall, but her head is looking at her from the side, from the edge of this wall, and she's looking right at this nun, the main character, and she has this grin on her face, and it's creepy, right? Because she's smiling at her. She's evil. You can see by the face that she's evil, but the smile is what makes it even creepier. Then there's this other scene in the movie where you have this American nun, and at this point she knows about the conspiracy, right? She knows, she dug up the archives, she found this key, and the key unlocks this secret door. And there's a hole on the wall, and she says, you know what if I just stick this key in? Because she meets this priest who, the actor who played this priest, he does a really good job. He's the same guy who played in the film The Witch, which was a really good horror movie. And this priest says, listen, this monastery is not what you think. It's evil. Pure evil. Pure evil. And this priest tells her there is a secret archive in the monastery that has the files, and the files document their plans to usher in the Antichrist. So she gets the key, she sees the hole in the wall, she thinks, what the hell, this is the door. She sticks the key in, and voila, the damn thing opens. So she walks down this stairs, and it's really creepy because everything is dark, and there's very little lighting. And she goes into this dim room, and it's just dark and creepy, and you don't know what's going to happen, so the suspense is there, and there's a lot of tension building in this movie. And she sees the archives, and she looks through all the archives, and she's, oh my God, she's looking through all these archives, and she sees the plan to usher in the Antichrist. So she's like, I got to get these files out of here and bring them to that priest who told me about this stuff. So she gets the archives, and she hides the archives, and then she's trying to get out of the monastery without being caught, and the nuns see her, and it's like, oh my God, woman, run, run, run. So she's running, and then the nuns get her. And it's a very good tension-wise, it's well done. Well done. I think a mark of a good horror movie is tension, and scenes that prolong tension. If it's just tension for a couple of seconds, it falls flat. But if you have a scene where you have prolonged tension, that's the mark, I think, of good horror. And she gets caught, and they put her in this dark room, and they lock her in there. It's kind of like this dungeon, and it's just so. It's a creepy scene because you know something bad is going to happen, right? The whole room is dark, and she can't see anything, and you don't know what's going to happen. And then she's sitting next to the bed. She's sitting on the floor beside the bed, and she sees in the corner of the room just pure darkness, but she notices something looming through the darkness. And at this point, you don't see it, but you know damn well that something bad's about to happen. Something terrifying is about to be witnessed, and you see this woman from the corner of the room, and she's not close to you. She's at a good distance from you. But you can see her, and the way she's walking, and just a little bit of lighting, just enough for you to see that she's walking in this very unnatural way, and the way her shoulders move as she walks, and from a distance, you can see this grin on her face, and that grin is, and I remember thinking, Val, that is creepy. The movie's not perfect. It's kind of, like I said, kind of comical, it's kind of silly, but that scene was creepy as hell. Creepy ass scene. It was almost like watching The Exorcist for the first time. It's a creepy ass scene. So as I was watching this movie, I was thinking, what makes us scared? Right? What makes a good horror movie? Well, like I said, tension. Tension is prolonged tension is the mark of a good director for horror, because you got to keep the audience on edge. You got to have scenes where the audience is relaxed, but then you got to go back to the tension. You got to turn the tension on and off. But when the tension is on, you need to really tighten the screws. And this movie does this a number of times in a good way, in an effective way. But I thought to myself, what makes us scared, right? It's not just tension. It's tension, but at the same time, it's seeing something that's unnatural? Why does an evil grin scare us, right? So, for example, I know this is going to get really dark, but hey, this is the Theodore Schubot YouTube channel, and this is, at this point, it's a doomer-ass channel. I mean, it is what it is. I try to be a little bit humorous, and I try to be a little bit energetic to provide some comic relief, but we live in a very dark world, and I mean, listen, if you want a positive YouTube channel, go watch those travel vlog channels where they go to Italy or they go to Sicily and they tell you about how good the tiramisu is, as if you can't get tiramisu in America. Come to Rome with me. Let me show you how good this pasta is. And it's the same pasta dish we've seen a billion times in a billion other travel vlog channels. Like, who cares? You know what I mean? Oh, watch me eat pesto. Okay, pesto. I've been making pesto since I was in middle school. I love pesto, but it's not very interesting to see people eat pesto, all right? In Italy, I just don't care. But those channels are very, very positive. Very, very positive channels. This channel ain't a positive one. All right? I'm looking at suffering. Just like when you read the New Testament, hey, is there a lot of positivity in the New Testament? Well, there is, but all the positivity is in light of looking at the mystery of suffering. Because, listen, the world is so creepy, and the world is such a... Man. The world... I'm just going to say it. The world is so dark that even God himself came to earth and they killed them. All right, that's how evil the world is. God himself came to earth in the flesh and they killed them. The world ain't a nice place. It's not. The world is a grim place. Now, there's positivity, but there's a lot of darkness out there. But anyway, going back to a film, what is so creepy about an evil grin? Why is an evil grin creepier than just an evil angry face? Because it's unnatural. Like, for example, when you look at a picture of Ted Bundy smiling, it's really creepy. Why is it so creepy? Because we all know that guy is a murderer. He's a mass murderer. And the fact that he's smiling indicates that he is a sadist. He takes joy in evil. Now, it's one thing for someone to be angry and temperamental, and maybe they get violent when they're temperamental. But it's another thing when someone is just wanton. You know, someone is just intentionally cruel and goes out of their way to be cruel and enjoys it and takes pleasure in cruelty and violence and evil, and they smile about it. Because naturally speaking, we humans, when we smile about something good. You know, your child was born, you smile, right? You're smiling because something good has happened. So smiling, when we see a smile, it registers in our brain, wow, something good is happening, right? This person is smiling because his child was born. This person is smiling because he just got engaged. This person is smiling because their child got first place in a tournament, something like that, right? Or this person is smiling because he just achieved something that's very difficult to attain. He achieved something that's very difficult to accomplish. And so we naturally register the smile as, oh, something positive is happening. But when we know that someone is evil and they're smiling, then the mind is having difficulty registering something. It's having difficulty registering what it's witnessing here. This person is evil, but he's smiling, and the brain is saying, high alert, you are seeing something evil. That's why you get so creeped out. Because that's your gut telling you, your soul, your very being telling you, this person is unnatural. So fear and horror, I'll just use the word horror. I think horror really just drives the point across. Horror is seeing something that's unnatural. So in the movie that I saw, you see this nun coming from a distance, and you know the face that is looming through the darkness. You know the face is evil, right? The face, the eyes, everything is creepy, but the smile tells us that this person is taking pleasure in evil. And so the brain registers that and gives you this feeling of horror to let you know that you're dealing with something seriously sinister. So then I thought about it more as I was watching this movie, and I thought about how we see certain things today that are just not it's to say that they're out of the ordinary is an understatement. We see certain things that are just absolutely devilish and criminal. Like, for example, when we see photos or videos of, and we've seen this before on the streets in wherever, San Francisco, wherever, the French Quarter, wherever, when we see videos of grown men on the streets waving rainbow flags, and there's children with them, right? And you have grown men that are half naked, and there's children with them. And we get horrified by that. Well, why do we get horrified by it? Because we're seeing something unnatural. And then our minds tell us, you're dealing with something sinister here. This ain't good. This isn't right. It's not only off, but it's evil and insidious and sinister and nefarious. It's infernal. It's devilish. It's abysmal. It's demonic. It's diabolical. It is, pick the word out of the dictionary that bespeaks this evil that you are seeing or that you are hearing of. We are terrified of the unnatural, and God built that in us. But there's many things that we hear about that are diabolical that give us this sense of horror. I mean, cannibalism is another one, right? If someone says, "Oh, I ate a cow, or I ate a deer, or I ate a sheep," okay. But if someone says that they ate a human being, your brain is telling you, wait a second, we don't do that. We don't eat humans. We're not designed to eat humans. Unnatural. And then you feel what? You feel a sense of horror. But what's terrifying is how so many people today hear about certain things that are unnatural and horrifying, and they don't have any feeling of horror. They, in fact, have the opposite feeling. They have the feeling that we should accept this. We have the feeling that we should accept it. And you could say, well, Ted, who's telling us to accept cannibalism? Well, there is a movement to normalize cannibalism. I talked about this years ago in an article. Richard Dawkins and Peter Singer, and Richard Dawkins, they talked about cannibalism years ago. And they talked about how we should have voluntary cannibalism.
Peter, I want to come back to the question of food and vegetarianism and things. First, let's go to an extreme. I suppose it would follow from your logic that there should really be no objection to cannibalism, provided the human victim, I suppose, either has given his consent or has been accidentally killed, and maybe what about eating roadkills?
Well, I mean, yes, if you're not responsible for the death and your practice of eating it is not going to encourage drivers to kill more animals, I don't think there's any problem with roadkill.
Human roadkills?
Well, I mean, then you get a question, I guess, of, well, what do the relatives think of it, and would the human have wanted this? Maybe most people would not like the idea that they would be eaten after they die, and we do try and respect people's wishes for after they die. We, follow their wills and so on.
And so we should.
And that we should allow people to put in their wills that when I die, I want my friends or relatives to eat me. Now, why the hell would someone want to be eaten? I have no idea. But again, we can't explain the diabolical. And that's another thing. We cannot explain the diabolical. We can't. We cannot explain the diabolical. It's impossible to fully explain it. You can describe it. You can describe diabolical actions. But you cannot fully fathom why people do diabolical things. It's out of our understanding because it's something that is rooted in something that is eternally evil. So there is a movement to push for cannibalism, and this horrifying thing is that you have people who agree with it and they will actually push it. Now, that is not as common as something like Sodom. You look at something like Sodom and it's horrifying. It's really horrifying. But so much of the world has now accepted it, and people continue to accept it. So another thing that's horrifying is the fact that people are not finding the sodomization of the world horrifying. Because naturally we should be against Sodom, but we're not. Because people are evil, and a lot of parents are evil, and they allow their children to be under the influence of this religion, the religion of the Republic of Sodom, and it's just how the world is going. And you see, here's another example. This is also horrifying. You have a story about a Palestinian being sodomized by Israeli soldiers. I'm drinking nettle tea, by the way. Nettle tea. It's quite good. It's an herbal tea. It has a really nice flavor. No sugar. I mean, I just want to taste the flavor of the herb, and it's quite nice. You have this story of a Palestinian being sodomized by Israeli soldiers. And this is illegal. I mean, I don't have to tell you that, right? It's illegal to do this. Sexual torture. It's sexual torture. And this is not the first time that this has happened. This has happened many times before. But it did happen. And it happened in the State Taman prison camp near the Negev region in Israel. And then, so what happened was that a bunch of police officers came, several police officers came to the State Taman prison camp. And they said, okay, we got to arrest these guys because they're being charged with committing this crime. And what happened? An entire mob of hundreds of fanatics came out and they flooded the prison to defend the sodomizers. So you think, well, hold on, sodomizing a man, sexually torturing a man to the point that his anus was severely injured, and they damaged his lungs and they broke his ribs, and I mean, this is evil. It's unnatural. So a normal person hears a story like this and says, what's this, sodomizing a guy to torture him? That's sick. This is just sick. I don't have to explain to you why this is sick. And that's another thing that I don't like about how a lot of people do things nowadays. They say, well, why is it sick? Can you explain to me without giving me the ick factor? No, what we have as human beings is the ick factor. Without the ick factor, we're not human. The ick factor is what makes us human. Because we hear about something that's immoral or something that's unnatural, something that is contrary to the natural order, and we say, that's wrong. Now, animals do things that are unnatural. Monkeys will eat each other. But monkeys aren't having monkeys are not having a philosophical discussion about why it's wrong to eat other monkeys. Because they don't have an ick factor. Chickens will cannibalize each other. Chickens will eat their own babies. Yeah, it's very common for chicken mothers to eat their own babies. Amongst birds, it's very common for the mother to kill the weakest of the babies in the nest. In the human world, if we hear about people doing that, we would say, oh, it's a crime. It's a crime. It's immoral. And what psychologically, what feelings-wise signals to us that it's wrong is the ick factor, where we don't have to, and we shouldn't have to, explain why doing these things is wrong and evil. They sexually tortured this man, and a mob of Jewish fanatics came and tried to defend the sodomizers. And the fact that so many people in Israel now defend the sodomizers, well, what the hell does that tell us? The world is becoming unnatural. That's what it's telling us. And what's sickening is that you'll have people in America who are, proud Zionists, and they have the Star of David flag on their little Twitter handle and all that, and they'll defend this kind of garbage. And it just shows us that the world is becoming more and more unnatural. It's unnatural. It's like these Romanians who defend Vlad the Impaler, and they say Vlad the Impaler was a great hero. And then you hear the stories about how for miles and miles and miles you would see endless bodies impaled on sharp poles. And the Romanians will say that this guy, Impaler guy, was a hero. He was a sick bastard. He was sick. Well, he was fighting Islam. He impaled Christians. I bet a lot of you LARPers didn't know that, didn't you? A lot of you LARPers probably didn't know that. He impaled Christians. He didn't give a damn about religion. It's unnatural. And the fact is that so many people today are accepting unnatural things, and they're describing, or they are referring to unnatural things as actions of heroism, heroic actions. Oh, you're for Sodom, you're a hero, you're so brave. Oh, you're a soldier who sodomized a man to torture him and you injured his anus. Oh, you're our soldiers, you're so courageous. What's happening? The world is quickly absorbing the unnatural. And what's happening is we are quickly doing the same exact thing that our ancestor did in far, far antiquity. Our ancestors did this in far, far antiquity. You see, after the flood, Noah, he landed on Mount Ararat, which is right in between Turkey and Armenia. And he had his 3 sons. And he taught his people, he taught his sons about God. And his sons taught their sons about God. Well, somewhere along the line, people stopped worshiping God and they started worshiping nature. And Paul gives us this little history. He gives us this history lesson. And he tells us in the first chapter of Romans that man knew God, but they began to worship the creation. And then he says, and then man began to reject the natural attraction for women, and they began to lust after each other. So homosexuality started to become acceptable in far, 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 far antiquity. And it became common. And that's why when you read about the ancient Greeks, or I know a lot of Greek people get mad about this, but when you read about the ancient Greeks or the ancient Romans, and you'll read that homosexuality was common. You go to the ancient Aztecs, even the Vikings had some stuff like this. Homosexuality became accepted in the ancient world. Christianity came along and said, okay, no more. And so Sodom was shunned upon. It was looked down on. But now, I mean, obviously, right? That's all gone. It's completely changed, and the Vatican has played a big role in this. I mean, the Vatican for a long time has covered up for pedophiles. I mean, you can go back centuries into the past, and you'll see that the Vatican had this problem of covering up perverts and predators. Savonarola, Girolamo Savonarola, said that the leaders in the Vatican, the leaders of the church, were sexually corrupting young boys and young girls, and they killed him. They killed that man because he was exposing the evils of the Vatican. So it's all done. I mean, what Christianity did for our ancestors is quickly just disintegrating. It's quickly breaking away. So what's happening in the world? We are accepting the unnatural. And a lot of us are not feeling horrified by it. I'm feeling horrified by it, but a lot of people are not. The good thing is that you have enough people, and hey, this is where we're going to get positive here. The good thing is that we have a lot of people who are horrified, who are still horrified by this. And the Olympics tried their garbage with the blue man. They tried their garbage in France, and the Christians got so mad that they expressed their outrage, and people stopped watching the Olympics. And then the French had to make an apology for it. And Christians still need to use their power to punish these bastards by hitting them where it really hurts, and that's money. But the world is accepting horror. And that's the reality. We're accepting horror. Horror is not just something we see in movies. I mean, you guys know this already. A horror film, to me, is simply an artistic expression of real human horror. It's kind of like a mythologization of real horror. It's kind of like how when the Greeks talked about the Battle of Troy, they described it in a mythological way, even though the Battle of Troy 100% happened. But the Battle of Troy is always described in a mythological way, where you have the gods being involved. And that's because the ancient Greeks believed that the gods were intervening in the battle. But we humans, we tend to artistically portray things because it makes us feel better. Why does it make us feel better? I fully don't really know. Maybe someone can help me explain why we prefer to portray evil realities in an artistic way. Maybe it's a form of relief. Maybe it's a form of just expressing something in a somewhat beautiful light or in a more artistic, aesthetic light, so that we can face the reality of evil in a easier way. Maybe it makes facing evil easier. I don't know. Maybe it's like the Mary Poppins when she said a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down, something like that. But we are accepting horror, and that's the reality. Anyway, you guys just heard some theology. God bless.